let me, just 1 second. Let me put timer because I talk too much, so I want to make sure I'm on my time. Good morning, everybody. I will be talking about circumventing censorship with Tor. Oop, here you go. This is the agenda. I will explain a little bit what Tor is, why Tor is good for circumventing censorship, and I will go some recent cases, Russia, Iran, Turkmenistan, and maybe others if I have time. But let's start with what Tor is. Just out of curiosity, anyone have heard of Tor here before? Great, awesome. So I'm going to go fast on this part. So Tor is a nonprofit based in the United States. We develop free and open source software to browse the internet privately, protect themselves against surveillance, and bypass censorship. The two main technologies that we're known for is our network and the Tor browser, which is a fork of Firefox with some innocent protections for people to connect to the network and browse the internet safely. So our mission is to advance human rights through building these technologies, and why Tor is good to circumvent censorship, right? So contrary to most VPNs, because we have this decentralized network, no one can control, it's not centered in one single entity, and that also by design impedes any one of us to know who is using Tor and what they're doing on Tor. Another thing that we have is a sophisticated circumvention technology for when Tor is blocked. Most VPNs don't have that, so when the country blocks the VPN, that's it, the user cannot use it. But we develop multiple methods, and I will talk a little bit about those methods of circumventing censorship against us. But there are two main different ways that people can censor Tor. This decentralized network, the IPs of the servers who are part of it, it's public. Like anyone can download the consensus list and then just block those IPs. The other way is a more sophisticated one where it's by package inspections, where the look is like, okay, this package looks like a Tor package, I will block it. So even if we have a hidden IP that they don't know of, they can still block Tor. But also, another thing is that a combination of the features that we have with the browser and the network itself, we provide privacy and protections against mass surveillance. So this is very important, especially in case of regions where the censor is more aggressive and people are at risk when they are bypassing the censorship, right? And also, Tor is free as free beer, so most VPNs, people have to pay for it. In many countries, people don't have the resources to do so, so it's very important for us to keep it free. And we also have a huge community. So we have trainers, we have people on the ground with different organizations training people on how to use Tor. We have partner organizations from independent investigative journalists to women's organizations and indigenous community working with us. We have translators, we have many volunteers that give us information about how to run task force in the countries and send us logs so we learn about how the censorship is happening and how we can combat that. So let's jump into the Russian case. Really short, summary. In December 2021, we learned that Russia was blocking our website because of our user support center. Russia is the country with the second largest number of users at Tor. At any given moment, we have around 300,000 people connecting from Russia into the network. This is around, and because we don't really track our users, so this is a lower average estimation that we have calculated. But this means 15% of our network, right? Also, we learned that in certain areas of the country, the network was also being blocked. So we start with our comms and community team, outreach, right, like a program to tell people what to do, how they can download Tor, how they can bypass the censorship in Russia, of course. So we started that campaign. We also started a campaign asking people to run bridges. What are bridges? Are servers of a network that is not public. So those IP addresses are the ones that are hidden, and we give them to users by request, right? Like, so a censor would have to be requesting one by one, so they would learn all the bridges. And sometimes they do and block those bridges, but we rotate the IP addresses of those bridges too. So anyways, we ask more people to be running them. And actually, because of this campaign, we doubled the number of bridges on the network. And we had no idea, right? Like this started in December, but we had no idea that in February, Russia was going to invade Ukraine, and this whole thing was going to a whole other scale, right? So this is two graphics really quick. The first one is people connecting to the network directly without using a circumvention tool. And you can see the connection going down, right? And that's because they start blocking our network. And you can see the green line, which is zoom in over there. Those are like our bridges, different types of bridges, and that we'll talk a little bit about them later. But going up and more people using it as the censorship. Normally, we know Tor is being censored because of that. We see our direct users graphic going down and the bridges going up. We know there's censorship happening in the country against Tor. So they start also blocking news outlets and social media. And we have another technology called onion servers. The .onion domain is secured by ICANN just for Tor. Nobody can use it. And those domains, you cannot access those on the normal internet. You can only access those inside of the Tor network. And this makes it super hard for a censor to block, right? Like it's not a DNS, it's not like you cannot block the domain name. They have no control. So this is very much used by news outlets and other websites when they want to provide to the user, to the audience, a method to access the service when it's being censored. So this is Twitter, unfortunately. Since then, a lot have changed, and they don't have anymore the onion service, but this is what happened at the time, right? Like, people start to tell folks, use Tor so you can access our services in Russia. And then this is other organizations that are using onion addresses, just for you to have an idea, right? Like it goes from free software organization projects to news outlets to social media. So also other nonprofits. I can talk more about this, but I'm going to move because. And if you want to know more about this, we can grab me downstairs for a coffee. But later on that year, we saw the Iran protests. I think everybody followed what was going on in Iran, right? And Mahsa Amini was killed, and that sparked a movement, women's movement for women's rights in Iran. And very similar, right? Like Iran blocks a lot of the internet, but they start blocking VPNs as well, methods that people normally use to access those servers, and start to apply different methods of censorship, like trolling and stuff like that, on the internet, like to combat, right, like the visibility of the movement on the internet. And then this is some tweets. You can see the first one, someone saying that literally they could tweet because they were using Tor. The other one is a volunteer showing the graphic of bridges going up because they start blocking Tor as well in Iran. And the other one is someone asking for people to run bridges, just like we did for Russia, to help combat, right, like the censorship. However, what happened with Iran that was very interesting for us is that the particular case, the best circumvention tool that worked for Iran is pluggable transport, which is also a bridge called Snowflake. So pluggable transports are different because instead of like you changing the IP address, so the sensor is blocking the IP address, that is a technology that we developed to combat the censorship that is analyzing package, right? So Snowflake, what it does, it masquerade your traffic to pretend to be a WebRTC traffic. So that raised the cost for the censor because they would have to block all WebRTC traffic. So people would not be able to have video conference or anything like that in Iran or any country. So, and also another thing that is cool about Snowflake, there's two things actually, is that sometimes when you create pluggable transport to masquerade traffic, you depend, like if you're doing domain fronting, you need to be paying the bandwidth for that server, right? Like AWS server, whatever domain fronting you're using, you need to pay the bandwidth. And we know the cost is super high, and we don't have resources to do that. So thinking of Snowflake, we decide like, how can we share this cost? How we can have people donating bandwidth so we can like help other folks. Also, we wanted to lower like the technical knowledge required to contribute. So if you're running a server or a bridge, right, on the Tor network, you need to actually know how to run a server. You need to pay for the cost of the server in a VPS somewhere, and this is like a barrier for people to contribute. With Snowflake, it's different. anyone can install a web extension on Firefox or Chrome and then become a proxy of this pool of proxies, donating a little bit of the network, the bandwidth. What happens is that this is super secure. Nobody's going to be watching your traffic. You're also not going to be able to see anyone's traffic who is using your bandwidth. The only thing you know is, I don't know if you can see, but like we have on the a little feedback for the volunteer that says, like in the last 24 hours, you help 15 people bypass censorship. So you know you're helping someone, but that's it. That's all you know. But because it's so simple, at the beginning of this whole thing, we started with like, also another detail, we launched Snowflake in 2021. We had no idea we would need it and the world would need it so much, right, like in the next year. But the thing was that when we launched, it was around 10,000 people. And after running those web extensions, right, like contributing as proxies, now we have 130,000 people doing that. So for you to have an idea, people who run relays on the network and bridges is around 7,000 volunteers. We increased it just by lowering, right, like how you can contribute. We increased that by 130 people around the world contributing with Snowflake. There was even protests in Berlin, and where people had placards saying, "Run Snowflake," which was very cool. So anyway, so this is users of Snowflake. So you can see we launched Snowflake, and then Russian thing happened, and you can see some experiments, because we had, like, we were not expect so much traffic, so we had to do load balancing and adding more hardware. But when Iran started, you can see a huge spike. And at some point, the entry point of, we have a broker that distributes, right, like those connections. That entry point, Iran figured out how to block it. But when we learned how they were blocking, and we fixed that, we protect that, you can see the thing going up again, right, like the graphic going up again. So that's the story of combating censorship, right? Like you're fighting, they figured out what you're doing, and then you change that, and then you wait for them to figure it out again, and you change it again. But this is pretty cool to see how it's been super effective too. This is some information for us is important. Before the protests, you can see we had some users in Iran, but not that many people knew about Tor or like were using Tor. After the protests, it went from 10,000, 11,000 to 110,000. This number stays steady. It's not like, oh, after the protest, people got off of it. People want to use it to be connected to the internet, because over there it's very censored. Tor is still blocked, so 39% of our bridges users are from Iran. And from that number, 90% are using Snowflake. So you can see it's the best method to bypass censorship in that country. And then we go to Turkmenistan. That is an interesting case. It's happening right now. Like 3 months ago, a lot of censorship started to grow in Turkmenistan. We know these things because people from the country, right, like talk with us. We have volunteers, the community, right, back to community is very important. But this is the first time that we see a censor being so fast and so aggressive. We never dealt with something like this. Another thing, and I will talk a little bit more about that, but another thing is that they block all the VPNs, and this is a shady thing. The only VPNs that work in the country cost $30 a month for people to use. So it's definitely a scam from the government to make money out of the censorship that they're doing. And that's why they hate us so much, because we're free. So, and people are jumping to our service, and it's the only service that is working there right now besides that VPN. So what I mean by faster, normally, like in the case of Iran and other censors, it takes some time for them to do that, right? Like to figure out how we're doing and then block us. In the case of Turkmenistan, it's like a matter of like 1 or 2 days. They figure out what we're doing, and boom, we need to change again, like as they start blocking us. So it's a small country, but that's like the toughest case we have, tougher than Iran, tougher than China, tougher than any other thing that we have seen. Another thing is that they're super aggressive. Normally, we wanted to raise the cost for the censor, like I said, right? Like if they block all WebRTC traffic, it will disrupt the country. So, but in case of Turkmenistan, they don't care. Like we have seen they blocking a whole range of IPs. For instance, AWS or other cloud servers, they just block everything. So it's very hard for us to find bridges P for bridges that are not yet blocked because they just block the whole range of it. Normally, a country will not want to do that because they have services in the country that are hosted on those cloud servers. So if they block the whole range, disruption in the country will happen. But in the case of Turkmenistan, the most important service that they use, they own the IP range, so they don't care about anybody else's IP range, so they're just blocking everything. So this makes, like I said, right, like Tor is super effective because it's free and trustworthy, and people are jumping to it. However, it's become super hard for us to combat this. Right now, we are, like, there are grants out there for rapid response. We are applying for it because we really need to move fast on the IP addresses change of bridges, right? And this has become one of, like, we never saw a case like this. So it's definitely the most aggressive case that we have encountered. And I don't know if I have time, maybe? Yeah, so this is very short. But we also ask users to share stories anonymously with us about why they use Tor. And I'm going to share some codes from them because we have multiple use cases, but this one is just about censorship, right? So, of course, we have people in China who are using Tor, and they are thankful for it. This is another user who didn't say which country they're from, but it's a heavy censored country, and it's a life and death situation for them. So Tor helps them fight back. Also, this is a person who was in the Hong Kong protests in 2019, 2020. And they use Tor browser or bot, which is for mobile, like a VPN for mobile that you can connect to Tor. And Tails is an operating system that wrote everything to Tor. And that helped them, right? Like keep up with information about the protests and publicize what was happening there. And that's it. This is where I was here to talk. I hope you like it. Sorry, it's fast. I went through it very fast. But if you have questions or anything, you can grab me later, and we can have coffee and talk about it. Thank you.